Rachel Podger is an extraordinary violinist. She specialises in performing Baroque music, playing lead violin and conducting at the same time. This is Rachel playing one of Telemann's 12 Fantasies for solo violin. Wonderful. Now, Rachel, that's an example of you performing Baroque music, but the important thing about all of this is that you try to do it authentically, trying to recreate sort of the way it may have been performed in the 18th century, and that begins with your instrument. Now, I am fairly ignorant about instruments generally. I've heard of a Stradivarius, which I know is special. You play something called a Pasolini violin, so what's the difference between that and a modern violin?
Well, there are lots and lots of differences, and I've got it right here in front of me. The thing that you probably would notice if you looked at it is that the neck looks a little bit different. It's actually, unfortunately I haven't got a modern violin here to compare it with, but if you looked at a violin from the side, you'd see on a modern instrument that the neck would be angled downwards.
It's much straighter and flatter.
This one is much straighter, so the neck comes straight out of the body, and that actually produces less tension, of course, because the strings are strung across the neck towards the tailpiece at the other end of the instrument, and so there's actually less tension because the neck is straight. And
the modern strings on a modern violin would be made from steel, but these aren't, obviously.
Yes, that's right. These are actually pure gut. The top three strings at least, and they're kind of what we call wound strings, because you can have synthetic strings on a modern instrument, or you can have strings that are where the core is gut but that are wound with aluminium maybe, or and also you might have a steel E string. They have a very different sound, these gut strings, because they're porous.
Well, let's hear it, because that's the best way to explain, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the A string. That's the D. So it's actually quite a mellow sound, and because also because of the shape of the bow, it's a kind of if you imagine a bow and arrow,
yes,
it's more that kind of shape. It's obviously not quite as curved as a bow and arrow, but it resembles that shape a little bit, and because of that shape, you have a kind of a natural bloom in the sound when you draw the bow across the string.
But not everyone likes the sound. Why is that?
I think it appeals to people because it's quite kind of, it can be very gutsy and very exciting when you play kind of rapid passages.
Go on, give us a bit.
Something like that. There's a real kind of bite that happens when you put the bow on the string, and it kind of bites the string because it's porous. And if you think of the string as having as something that has depth, so you can play right at the top of the string, or you can play right down to the bottom of it, kind of really get into the string, and you can do everything else in between. So you can play kind of on the top like this, and then you can play further in, and you can play right down, kind of and it's actually extremely exciting, the sound, and sometimes you have the feeling that it might crack any minute, the sound.
And it is an extraordinarily sensitive instrument to temperature,
oh, yes,
humidity.
I mean, last night we were playing in Shropshire, in Oswestry. We came back in the early hours of this morning. And
very perfect.
And I must say, it was, it wasn't particularly cold in the church, although in the vestry it was colder, so backstage there's always different temperatures, so you have to kind of gauge those kind of things. But then, of course, in the church, while we're playing, strings go out of tune because they're not covered, they're naked gut. They're very susceptible to changes in humidity. So, and the fact that there's loads of people sitting there breathing and there's condensation in the air doesn't really help.
Oh my God.
Which I told them in the concert.
So presumably all of that, we've talked about the instrument, but all of that contributes to this idea of an authentic performance. You're actually in some ways making it much harder for yourself.
Absolutely.
So and do you interpret the music differently then from the sound that we're used to, because Baroque music is quite familiar?
Yes. Style is a very, very big factor in interpreting any music, in fact. The program that I'm doing at the moment is all based around the end of the 17th century. It's all kind of Austrian Bohemian music. So Bieber and Schmelzer and Muffat, composers that are not kind of, they're not household names like Bach and Handel and Vivaldi, but it's absolutely beautiful music. It's very passionate. The style there's something uplifting about it. It's quite kind of folky. There's lots of kind of dance character. And then you also get these beautiful kind of sustained, long kind of cantabile kind of singing lines as well. And there's a lot of contrast.
Now, women are often said to be able to multitask, but I'm fascinated by the idea that you can conduct and play lead violin at the same time. And we're not just talking about in a chamber music context where perhaps that's not so surprising, but within the context of a much bigger orchestra. How do you do that?
Well, I'd much rather lead from the violin, or as you say, conduct from the violin, than without the violin. I wouldn't trust myself to give the right kind of movements, and I haven't studied.
But there must be
conducting.
A real physicality about it.
Absolutely. Oh, you have to be very, very physical, because you're not just inspiring the rhythm and the enthusiasm for the music, but you're also, you're giving a lead, really.
So how do you do it? Is it you're not gesturing with your hands because you're holding a violin
That's
and playing?
Right. Well, what you do, you would lift the violin. As at the same time you breathe in. So for instance, if you're doing an upbeat, which is something like that kind of thing, so the first note is an upbeat and then you have a downbeat, so you can feel that the gesture in that goes yum ba, and you can just hear that, can't you? And so you do that with your body. You actually lift the instrument before, and I breathe and inspire everyone else to breathe, and everyone's looking at me at the same time, and I go I'm doing it audibly now so that you can hear it. I wouldn't do that in a concert, but also if you kind of widen, I've noticed actually, if you widen your eyes and get everyone to be completely engaged with you all the time, and play as much as you can from memory, so you're actually looking at people constantly and kind of trying to get them to be as involved as possible, then that helps loads, and it becomes very alive as a performance.
Fantastic. Music as a visual performance. That's really a lovely idea. Rachel Podger, thank you very much.